You laughed at his wheelchair, Mr. Dalton." The courtroom fell silent. Karoline didn't blink. She just pressed play, a video clip loaded behind her. And in 15 seconds, the room was stunned. What came next wasn't just a defense. It was a takedown the internet would never forget. A husband mocked for surviving war. A CEO too arrogant to notice who was watching. But Karoline, she noticed everything. And by the time it ended, nobody was laughing, especially not him. The silence in that courtroom wasn't ordinary. It wasn't the kind you hear before a verdict. It was heavier, like the air was waiting to see if anyone had the guts to breathe first. Karoline sat still, not a twitch, not a blink. Across the room, the man who mocked her husband, her disabled husband, had just realized something. This wasn't just a legal hearing. It was a reckoning. Just 2 weeks ago, he had smirked on a podcast and said, "If you can't even walk, maybe you shouldn't talk." The clip didn't go viral immediately. But when Karoline posted a response, she didn't scream. She didn't rant. She simply said, "You can mock his legs, but let's see how far you run when truth catches up." And that hit hard. Within 24 hours, the internet was on fire. Veterans, activists, journalists, everyone wanted to know who she was, why she was so calm, and what exactly she had on him. That's when the narrative flipped. This wasn't just some wife defending her husband. This was a woman who'd been quiet for far too long, and she had receipts. Turns out Karoline had spent the last 4 years collecting every recorded instance where this man, Mark Dwyer, a wealthy media figure and free speech purist, mocked, manipulated, and monetized off disabled veterans. He'd turned pain into punchlines. And Karoline? She turned his ego into evidence. Now, as Mark sat at the defendant's table with zero confidence and a lawyer who looked ready to flee, Karoline didn't need to say much. Her presence was the argument. The courtroom was packed. Cameras were rolling. And yet the moment felt intimate, like the entire country was leaning in to hear one woman say what so many had felt for years. "We're not your props. We're not your jokes. We're people. And today, you answer for that." This story isn't about revenge. It's about exposure, truth, and the unexpected power of a woman who had every reason to stay silent, but chose not to. And believe me, what happens next? No one, not even Mark, was ready for it. Karoline had been quiet up until now, but what happened on the third day of court was something even the judge didn't see coming. You see, Tom, the man who mocked Karoline's husband, wasn't just some loudmouth in a courtroom. He was strategic. He knew how to play to the crowd. On day 1, he joked about Karoline's husband's military record. Day 2, he brought in blurry photos to prove the man was never deployed overseas. And on day 3, he smiled as he said, "I guess being a husband doesn't mean being a ma, that was it." The courtroom fell into a silence so loud it almost echoed. But here's the twist. Karoline didn't shout. She didn't cry. She did something no one expected. She reached into her worn-out leather purse and pulled out her husband's old combat boots. The very same boots he wore the day he lost his leg to an IED in Kandahar. She held them up slowly and said, loud and clear, "He didn't have time to be your definition of a man. He was busy saving lives." Boom. Every phone in that room went up to record. Even the court reporter stopped typing. But Tom? Tom laughed. He pointed at the boots and said, "Nice prop." "You people are such performers." This wasn't just offensive anymore. It was cruel. The public had seen arrogance before, but this was straight-up venom in a suit. And it didn't stop there. He went further. That evening, Tom went on a live stream. "She's lying," he said. "I Googled her husband. There's no public record of his injuries. She's spinning some trauma tale to gain sympathy. He even mocked the boots again. Probably bought those off eBay. It was the worst possible mistake he could have made. Why? Because what Tom didn't know was that someone was watching that stream. A very specific someone, Sergeant Davis, one of Karoline's husband's unit leaders. retired, respected, and tired of seeing veterans humiliated. That night, Davis posted a video, short, grainy, but powerful. It showed Karoline's husband, lying on a stretcher, gripping someone's hand, Davis's hand, right after the explosion. No blood, no gore, just raw human pain. And Davis's caption? His name is James. He didn't deserve your lies, and neither does Karoline. By morning, the hashtag #StandWithKaroline was trending across the country. Suddenly, it wasn't just a courtroom feud anymore. It was national. Veterans groups began speaking out. People started sharing their own story. That tweet alone got over 300,000 likes. People felt what Maya felt. For many, this wasn't just about a video. It was about everything wrong with how power is used. Maya followed up the next day with a video message. Sitting on her couch, raw and unscripted, she said, "When I saw that man laughing at someone losing their home, it broke something in me. I thought of my dad. He lost his job when I was 9. We nearly ended up on the street. James isn't just one man. He's every family that's been through hell while others stood by and mocked." Her words hit deep. Overnight, Karoline and James became household names, not because they asked for it, but because the world needed to hear their story. Then came Tom Harris, a massive YouTube voice with over 12 million followers. Known for his no-nonsense attitude and viral social commentaries, Tom uploaded a 6-minute breakdown of the video. "This ain't just a neighbor being mean. This is what happens when people with a little power think they can treat others like trash. And the guy in the video, that laugh, yeah, that's going to haunt him." Tom's video skyrocketed to the top of trending within hours. Comments flooded in, support poured out. And Brian, he was getting absolutely torched. Even the sports world joined in. Jenna Lee, an Olympic gold medalist and one of the most admired athletes in the country, posted an Instagram story. "Evicting someone and then laughing at their pain? Not on my watch. James, Karoline. We see you, and we're standing with you." That message was reshared by athletes across the country. NBA players, soccer stars, even former Olympians, all chimed in. The movement wasn't just online anymore. It was becoming a cause. Karoline, stunned by the overwhelming support, responded in a short interview. "We were invisible just a week ago. Now the whole world is watching. We don't feel small anymore." And that was the truth. They weren't invisible anymore. They were symbols of something real. Because when celebrities speak, the world listens. But when the world listens and still cares, that's when change begins. When the story hit national media, it didn't land gently. It exploded like a firecracker in a library. News anchors, talk shows, and late-night comedians all grabbed the story like it was hot off the scandal shelf. And the mockery? Oh, it didn't just rain on Brian, it absolutely poured. Satirical news outlets turned him into a walking punchline. One headline from a popular comedy site read, "HOA member confused why world hates him after laughing at man's misery. I thought it was funny." Late-night hosts weren't far behind. Troy Summers, the king of satirical monologues, opened his show with, "In today's news, a man with a god complex and a name tag just got publicly destroyed for laughing at a guy being evicted. Brian, buddy, maybe next time, try empathy. It's free." The audience roared. The clip was shared millions of times online, with comment sections turning into virtual roast battles. Brian became a symbol, not just of HOA overreach, but of how detached people can become when they're drunk on authority. But the real twist? The media mockery created something bigger, a shift. People began questioning more than just Brian's behavior. They started questioning the culture that enabled him. Panelists on morning shows asked, "Why do HOAs have this much unchecked power? Why is cruelty becoming a form of entertainment? And why are we okay watching people suffer until a celebrity tells us not to be?" It hit hard. The public began to reflect. not just on Brian, but on themselves. Social media feeds filled with personal confessions and calls for change. People were no longer laughing, they were thinking. Satirical cartoons depicted HOAs as mini dictatorships, while commentaries unpacked the dark comedy of real estate elitism. It wasn't just Brian getting grilled, it was the whole system. And somewhere in all that noise, Karoline and James's quiet dignity stood in contrast. The louder the media mocked Brian, the more people admired the couple who hadn't asked for attention, but were now changing the conversation. This wasn't just a meme anymore. It was a moment, a cultural shift. And the joke? It wasn't on James. It was on anyone who thought mocking pain was power. Just when the world had rallied behind Karoline and James, Brian did what most guilty people do. He panicked. And in that panic, he launched what can only be described as a pathetic smear campaign. But instead of clearing his name, he dug himself even deeper. Within days, shady blogs and anonymous posts started surfacing. Articles claimed James had a history of financial irresponsibility and accused Karoline of manipulating public sympathy. The problem? None of it was true. There were no sources, no evidence, just badly written fiction trying to pass as fact. But Brian didn't stop there. A private video, clearly edited, was leaked showing James getting frustrated during a neighborhood meeting, something from years ago. The video tried to frame him as unstable and difficult. But the internet wasn't buying it. People immediately pointed out the obvious cuts, the lack of context, and the desperation in trying to discredit a man who had already lost everything. Still, Brian doubled down. He hired a so-called reputation management team, basically a PR firm with no shame, to flood forums and comment sections with anti-Karoline narratives. She's just chasing clout. This was all a setup. They knew what they were doing. But what Brian didn't realize was this. The public had already made up its mind, and nothing screams guilt louder than trying too hard to rewrite the story. Karoline, ever calm, responded with a single sentence during a brief interview. "We don't need to defend ourselves. The truth already did." And that was that. The smear campaign? It backfired badly. What was supposed to bury Karoline and James only cemented their place as the people who stood tall, while Brian fell apart. The tide had turned, and it was time for action. With the smear campaign failing, Karoline and James, and those who had stood by them, refused to stay silent. The counterattack began not as an act of vengeance, but as a bold stand for truth and justice, a call to correct a narrative that sought to bury the truth. Every supporter became a soldier in a digital battlefield. Social media users, determined not to let falsehoods win, flooded blogs, forums, and comment sections with evidence and personal testimonies that painted the real picture of Karoline and James. Stories emerged of the couple's kindness, generosity, and resilience. One post detailed how James had spent his weekends volunteering at a local shelter, while another described how Karoline had organized community fundraisers without ever asking for anything in return. The evidence was irrefutable. Audio clips from neighborhood meetings, photographs of the couple helping those in need, and heartfelt letters from community members, all spread like wildfire across online platforms. A viral hashtag number Truth for Karoline began trending nationwide. It wasn't just the digital world. Local news stations, once reluctant to touch the story, began reporting on the overwhelming support for the couple. Investigative segments uncovered Brian's ties to the smear campaign, including leaked internal emails from the shadowy PR firm he had hired. The more the truth emerged, the more Brian's credibility crumbled. Every media outlet that had once lampooned him now faced criticism for their coverage. Talk show hosts, once complicit in Brian's narrative, were now forced to reevaluate their stance and even invite Karoline and James for interviews. One late-night host said on air, "When the truth fights back, "There's no place left for lies." His comment resonated with millions of viewers and sparked further debates on ethical journalism. This counterattack was more than a public relations war. It was a cultural reclamation. Within a week, the movement had grown into a powerful social justice initiative. Lawyers offered free services to those defamed by Bryan's campaign, while local community organizations coordinated support efforts. Protests emerged in front of government offices demanding accountability for those responsible for sowing discord and misinformation. Even celebrities amplified the counterattack. Maya Jenkins, who had already spoken out in support, hosted a live-streamed fundraiser for defamation law reform, urging her millions of followers to donate and push for legislative changes. Influencers from all corners of the internet posted collaborative videos emphasizing the need to stand united against online bullying and dishonesty. At the heart of the counterattack was a simple message: the truth would not be silenced. In an emotional interview, Karoline stated, "This isn't just about us. It's about every voice that has been stifled by lies. We rise together because truth rises together." Her words galvanized further support and cemented the movement's call for accountability. As investigations into the smear campaign unfolded, Bryan found himself isolated, his reputation shattered by the force of a united community. The counterattack was not merely a response, it was a declaration that injustice and deceit would no longer be tolerated. It marked the beginning of a cultural shift, a digital uprising that restored dignity for all who believed in the power of truth. In the final reckoning, the counterattack proved that unity and veracity could triumph over deceit. Every shared post, every testimony, and every act of solidarity built an unbreakable wall against falsehoods. With each passing day, the movement grew stronger, proving that when communities stand together, even the most powerful lies are powerless to overcome the steadfast light of truth. This victory became a beacon of hope, inspiring uprisings in communities nationwide abundantly. For weeks, Tom had acted like he was untouchable, the smug HOA board member who smirked in the background while Bryan led the charge. He never raised his voice, never took center stage, but everyone knew he was the brain behind the cruelty. And when Bryan fell, the spotlight slowly turned to the man in the shadows. It started with whispers, anonymous tips, screenshots. One former HOA member leaked an email chain where Tom coldly instructed Bryan to make an example out of James. Another revealed a secretly recorded call where Tom bragged about how this eviction will scare the rest of them into line. People were stunned, not just because of what he said, but how calmly he said it. Calculated, manipulative, cold, the kind of cruelty that hides behind a polite smile and a pressed suit. The backlash was swift. News networks replayed the leaked call on loop. "HOA puppet master exposed," the headlines screamed. Social media lit up. Tom the Tyrant trended for 3 straight days. Protesters showed up outside his gated community. He couldn't step outside without cameras chasing him. But what really broke Tom wasn't the media. It was the betrayal from within. Other HOA members, eager to save their own skins, turned on him. They released more internal documents, revealing Tom's plans to raise fees, fine families over minor infractions, and even block affordable housing in the neighborhood. Suddenly, his allies vanished. His power evaporated. At a press conference, his voice cracked. I was only doing what I thought was right for the community, but no one bought it. His resignation came 2 days later. No applause, no sympathy, just silence, and the sound of one more tyrant falling. Tom had spent years hiding behind rules and paperwork, but in the end, the truth didn't just catch up to him. It crushed him. The cameras were rolling. The crowd was silent. And in the middle of it all, Karoline stood on the small stage outside the courthouse, clutching a simple note card, though she didn't really need it. Her voice was steady, but her eyes, they held back something heavier: pride, pain, strength. She took a breath. 18 months ago, my husband and I were humiliated in front of our neighbors, laughed at, evicted, mocked. Not because we did something wrong, but because someone thought our struggle made for good entertainment. There was a pause. You could hear birds chirping, a child coughing in the back, but no one moved. We didn't ask for this spotlight. We didn't want the fame or the hashtags or the headlines. We just wanted a home, a quiet life, a little peace. She looked at James. He nodded, his hands gripping the side of the podium. But maybe peace doesn't come quietly. Maybe sometimes the world needs to see what injustice really looks like, to understand why it can't be ignored anymore. Applause began to ripple through the crowd. Brian thought he was laughing at us. Tom thought he could hide behind rules. But what they never expected was you. Every person who shared our story, who spoke up, who didn't scroll past. You turned our pain into purpose. She held up the eviction notice, the original, yellowed with time. Then slowly, she ripped it in half. Cheers erupted. This is no longer our shame, it's their shame, their legacy. And today we take back what they tried to steal. Not just our home, but our dignity. Tears now, unapologetic, raw. Let this be a message to every HOA tyrant, every silent enabler, every bully hiding behind a rule book. We're done being quiet. We are not your punchline. We are not your property. We are people. She stepped back. A moment of silence. Then the crowd rose, clapping, whistling, chanting their names. Karoline and James didn't win a case. They won a movement. Months later, the neighborhood looked different. Not just the paint on the houses or the fresh sidewalks, but the atmosphere. It felt lighter. Like the silence that once hovered had been lifted. Karoline and James moved back into their home. No ribbon-cutting ceremony, no grand parade. Just the sound of a door unlocking, a door that never should have been shut in the first place. The HOA restructured. Brian was still fighting lawsuits, and Tom had vanished from public life completely. A new board was elected, this time by the people, real people. And the first vote they passed? A resolution banning evictions without community approval. But beyond the laws and headlines, something else had changed. Neighbors who once kept their distance now waved from porches. Kids played in driveways that used to feel tense and watched. People talked, listened, cared. Karoline started a podcast, Voices from the Curb, where residents from across the country shared their own HOA horror stories and how they fought back. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was a movement. And as one neighbor said on the show's very first episode, if they could stand back up, then maybe we all can. If this story shook you, if it made you angry, made you cry, made you cheer, then don't let it end here. Hit that like button to show Karoline and James their fight mattered. Subscribe if you believe stories like this need to be heard, need to be shared, and need to keep coming. And drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were in their shoes? Because your voice, it matters more than you think. And one more thing. Share this with someone who still believes no one's watching. Let's prove them wrong. Together.